Hi, my little love bugs. It is January 27th, 3:48 p.m. GMT. We're in London, baby. Okay. I was just going through my podcast, and, a lot of you listened to why I moved to London, and I thought I would elaborate on that because I have some more clarity on why I moved to London. If you listened before, you know the journey. I didn't actually choose London. I didn't decide to live here. It was kind of just the flow of events that I surrendered to. And right now I'm reading The Surrender Experiment by Michael A. Singer. And it's incredible because it's really helping me just truly surrender into everything, even surrendering into this winter hibernation mode. I don't know about you, but I identify as a high performer, or at least used to. Now I'm trying to identify as just my spirit who's living in this body called Sky. We love this body, though. It's an incredible body and it performs very well, like at the gym and stuff. So there's been a huge change in myself this year, and I'm thrilled about it. The energy is low, so you can't really hear the excitement and thrill in my voice, but it's there, I swear. I'm surrendering into presence, like complete presence. I like to think I'm present, but I'm still such a goal setter and an ambitious little rugrat. We all know that. And there's a part of me now that doesn't identify with that part of me. I hope you're enjoying this so far. A little insight into my thoughts all the time. Basically, as I did my annual reflection, it took a lot of time. I found it was quite difficult this year. There were just a lot of resistance to planning and prepping and reflecting and all of that jazz. And I still haven't necessarily sat down and done 2025 goals like I usually do. As you know, I literally made a book on goals, and it's not necessarily about goals, but it's just direction for your life, which I think is 100% useful because a lot of it is about awareness of where you are right now. And then where do you want to go? And then how do you bridge the gap? And then what's the game plan to get there? So it's in a perspective of, designing your life to be exactly how you want it. And I think those routines and tools and habits are 100% necessary for you to almost fall back on. At least for me, the gym is non-negotiable from Monday to Friday. Today I really didn't feel like it. And I got there and I basically just stretched. I didn't actually train. I walked downstairs. My neck hurt so much. And I saw a friend and she was like, "How are you?" And I was like, "Good." And she looked at me and she goes, "Are you?" And I was like, "No, I'm definitely not good. I thought I was going to do some weights today, but apparently not because I just can't move." I mean, I can, but my neck is holding some energy that I'm just trying to release internally. I'm not 100% clear on what it is, but it's stagnant. I'll tell you that. So the point of this one, though, is talking about why I moved to London because it seemed like that one was quite interesting. And then also elaborating on where I'm at now. So before I moved to London, as you know, it wasn't necessarily the game plan. It was more like a starting base, and we'll go from there once I get here. And then everything just worked out. I got the most phenomenal flat. I'm obsessed with third space, if you can't tell already. I love that gym. It's my favorite place in the world. I know it's a bit ridiculous that that's my favorite place, but besides, the ocean in Vancouver, my parents' deck, that's also my favorite place. Miss it. There's something about the energy here that is holding me here, but in the most blissful way. And I'm enjoying it and I'm loving it and I feel content and satisfied. And for once in my life, I don't actually feel the desire to travel, which is kind of bizarre for me because, as you know, I travel a lot and I love it. But physically, I was getting tired and a part of me more just wanted to dive deeper into myself and explore the destinations within me. And when I would travel so much, I'm kind of just want to go home and meditate. It's kind of all I want to do right now. So I find there's a lot of resistance towards the goals that I had before. I no longer feel such a desire to do that, and I don't know if sometimes I'm like, should I push myself to do stuff, or should I sit back into this and surrender even more? And maybe these are ego-related goals and they're not actually a part of my divine path, purpose, soul purpose, because that has been my intention for the last couple months, is just completely surrendering myself to serve humankind in whatever way that I am best suited for and designed for. So that has made me take a step back from what Sky wants and asking, is that what's best for me as a whole? Is that my purpose in this life? Are these goals Sky's goals, or are these goals divine spirit goals / alignment? Things like that, if that's making sense. So I've taken quite some time, and it's still unknown. I'm now just truly going with the flow, and whatever comes my way. The Surrender Experiment is incredible. If you haven't read it, I highly suggest you do, because it's such a nice way for somebody to see that you can still be that little yogi self, spiritual namaste, but then also super successful in the outer world, but in a flow state where you're simply just going with life's flow for you, and it all happens maybe not blissfully but organically. And I am noticing opportunities are revealing themselves to me in a way that's just so flowy, and I love it, and it's super cool. But that the older version of me is still kind of like, should I be focusing on this, or should I now put my energy and direction into what's popped up to me now? So a part of me is as well is like, well, don't even overthink it. Just like keep doing what you're doing, surrendering, meditate, go to the gym, do those things that make you happy, but also lose that part of yourself that thinks the other things don't make you happy, and just look at them in a way that life has given it to you as a gift, and to just try your best at it and see what happens. Try not to have your own perspective or your thoughts or your kind of judgment towards if you like something or you don't like something, and simply just be in flow with it. I hope that makes sense. I'm basically kind of just trying to say what they say in the book, because that's how I've been living lately, and I'm loving it, and it's really cool. And I almost feel like the decluttering of the things that I no longer wanted to put as much time and effort into is happening automatically and sort of naturally. So it's a really interesting space to be in. I've been speaking a lot with people, and a few podcasts you'll see come up, or some that are about to happen, is working in alignment with nature. And I find that has been interesting for me. I've been surrendering to tiredness a lot. I still get up and do like what I need to do, but I don't have the drive that I used to have. I guess it's just different drive. It's not as external drive anymore. It's more like, I don't want to be pushing in the outside world. I want to be diving and surrendering to the inside world and the consciousness and our spirit and our divine path and all of those fun things. But that's not necessarily socially accepted, It's kind of like, what is that? Well, that's a great question. I'm not sure exactly. That's why I'm trying to figure it out. But it's very interesting, and there's a lot of unknowns, and it's like almost business development. Like you're kind of building this company within yourself, and you're figuring out all the roles and even the tasks. And the most bizarre part is like, well, there is none. That's the whole point, is to just be. And that's something that I've been discussing with my mom over the past year, I guess, maybe like 9 months. is because it's really interesting. Because in London, I trust I'm meant to be here, and I'm like very happy with that. But also, regardless of my emotions, I'm here and I'm happy and all is well in the world. But I wonder why I'm here sometimes, because it's not the lifestyle that I love. It's a different chapter for sure. It's networking. It's getting out in a different way in the world, being super social, which for me, if you know me or whatever, I mean, I'm outgoing. So people are always like, what, you're introverted? And I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, I'm outgoing when I'm out, but I need like the whole week to myself for one day of being out and about. And London is extremely draining, I find, but in a really bizarre way. Like I feel drunk or high or just like, whew, after a day in central London, I'm like, I need to get home and I just need to like breathe for a minute here. Perhaps that's overstimulation. I don't really know. Maybe I'm sharing a little bit too much here and you're like, Sky, okay. No, she's great. She's fine. She's always fantastic. But that being said, so when I have these conversations with my mom, I'm like, it's interesting that I'm here because this isn't necessarily where I chose to be or the place that I saw myself in terms of lifestyle, because I love the ocean. There's no ocean anywhere near, barely any places to go in the water or lake. I love the forest, trail running. There's people say the parks. Yeah, these are like fields of grass. Not even. I don't even know what you call it. Bush. It's not a forest, that's for sure. And that's okay, and I love it, and it's a great different chapter, and that's what I wanted. I wanted new experiences, and I surrendered to whatever was meant to be for me, because I didn't exactly know what I want, because I know that the divine has better things in store for me than I can imagine. So I often just say, like, show me beyond my imagination what life could be like. And so here we are. I've been diving into what is my purpose here now that I am here. And it's been fascinating because it's like, you come to London to be like in one of the biggest cities in the world, yet I find myself wanting to just meditate. But I think because it's not my ideal way of being out in the world, my ideal way is being in nature. And the closest nature to me right now is me, my internal self. So, but I was very driven when I first got here for like my goals and all that jazz. And I thought it almost feels like a business retreat where I'm sort of secluded and I basically just go to the gym. I come home and I work and it's great. And I have a beautiful little routine. And I love it. So it's funny because it's like, didn't think I'd be coming to London to like buckle down a bit more, You'd think London is like a launch pad, which in a way it is, but in just a different way than I had expected it to be. It's a launch pad for my spirituality. So classic, like 10 minutes in, sorry. My ADHD is like, okay, I'm done. I'm on to the next. I feel like so many of these podcasts just like halt. It's like me trying to tell a story. If you know me, whenever I tried to tell a story, I'd just be like, I'm over it. And people are like, well, what do you mean? You're halfway through. You got to finish the story. So here we are. So that being said, why did I move to London? Well, I was trusting my divine path and completely surrendering it. What am I doing now? I'm completely surrendering to nature, and it's winter, so I am allowing myself to rest. And it's not necessarily sleeping, but it's a lot of resting where, say maybe a month ago or two, I found I was so tired in the day, like I'd have to take some naps. I also work kind of late into the evening. I'm just always kind of, I'm not working all the time, but like I do kind of leave the whole day just open for work. I don't really hang out with people, only on Saturdays. But a lot of it is internal work. And I was like, oh, how interesting. I don't necessarily feel a drive to be on my computer for 8 hours or be painting for 8 hours. I'm still doing a little bit of everything, as I am and probably always will be. But a lot of work is just naturally happening where my body is calling me to close my eyes, not fall asleep, but rest. And I put on this Tibetan healing sounds. And then I go into a zone, and it's this super meditative place where I can see through my third eye. And it's getting stronger and stronger, where once it was just like a little blip for maybe 2 seconds, and I could see this world and this picture, and it was so clear. It was like reality. I wasn't sure my eyes were open or closed. It was almost even more clear than my own eyesight. And I told my mom, and I was like, oh shit, I saw through my third eye. Like, that was awesome. And she's like, that's great. I did that too. And this and that. I'm like, cool. And now I find when I'm doing these kind of rest midday meditations, I'm beginning to see more clearly through my third eye. And I try to figure out what it is, and then but then I find it sort of fades away, like in water. If it's clear water and then you drop a pebble in, it ripples and you can't see clearly anymore. So me trying to figure out what it is almost like dropping the pebble in. So I'm almost surrendering to like the unknown of whatever is in my third eye and just following that. Which is why, like, movies are cool sometimes, but I honestly find them not very engaging, because when you watch a movie through your third eye, oh my god, you guys, that is the coolest thing in the world. It's difficult to explain. All in all, why did I move to London? Well, the unknown has led me into spiritual growth. And that's probably what it's all about, which is really fun. And external things are happening too, but that's not necessarily how I'm quantifying life anymore. It's more, how often am I in a state of peace? It's actually just explained to my friend the other day. We were talking about grief. And basically we were both saying, like, well, we think we've accepted the reality that you most likely don't get over grief or somebody passing. You just learn to live with it. But there are still measurements that I do. I might have mentioned this before, where I quantify like how much progress I'm making emotionally, basically. Where years ago, when it first happened, when Al first passed, I cried like several times a day, for probably weeks, maybe months. And then it was like once a day, maybe like twice a day, kind of in the morning and before bed. It was just like a few tears. It wasn't like I'm necessarily so sad. It was just like kind of hard to believe. And tears would just stream down my face. And then I get to the gym and I'm like, all right, moving on with the day, whatever. And then it was like once every couple days. And then maybe like once a week or twice a week. And then once a month. And now I find it's probably like once a quarter. So it's not like once a year, unfortunately. Maybe fortunately, whatever. I'm surrendering to it. It's still like once a quarter, maybe like once every twice a year, something like that. Feels like a brick wall hits me. And you just, it's like, whew. It's so intense, you guys. But it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful experience in a very bizarre way. But the point of that is how I measure it in like, if I'm healing through this, is measuring the moments between. So I call like, you have a moment when you're breaking down or like grief just hits you like a brick wall. And then the moments between. And the moments between, I'm trying to expand so that maybe eventually it's like once only 5 years do I feel this intense grief. I don't know, but it's definitely been progress since 5 years ago. So the moments between is what I measure in terms of grief. Then on a day-to-day basis, I don't think about this on a day-to-day basis. I just mean like apart from that, that's one little example. And the next is how I'm kind of measuring my success in life is not necessarily my achievements that I'm doing that others can see. It's the achievements within me. And how long can I stay in a peaceful, blissful state? Like, are those now moments of bliss expanding where maybe somebody pisses me off, but it lasts like 2 minutes, not an hour or two or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So it's really cool. You just like play with your emotions, but in a way of surrender where you're not controlling them. You're just like observing them. I'm still exploring, clearly. But in terms of, say if you have my workbook, Master Your Mindset, it's written in a way, that there's goals. And now when I explain it, it changes a little bit because people understand goals as like something measurable, which is great. You should have SMART goals, specific measurable goals. But you can also have a goal of peace, like inner peace and those emotions that you want to embody on a day-to-day basis almost all the time. So as you're working through it, meet yourself where you're at. I do find though, I don't know if I'd be able to surrender to this extent if I didn't have that discipline and drive to begin with and already sort of instilled that in me. You almost need, it's like you need a brick or a stone in order to sculpt it. You can't just start sculpting something out of nothing. So that book is useful, though it's useful. Put a lot of time into it. I hope you're enjoying it. But it's useful in terms of if you find you're at a state, if you don't know what to do with your life, 100% use it. But then if you find you're almost sort of stepping back and you're carving away and you're skimming the fat, then it still works, but just think of it in a way of like, okay, now instead of materialistic things, which this explains it all in there as well, I'm just kind of going over it again because it's right in front of my face and it really is like the guide Bible to my life. How can you fill in more things that you love, or how can you play with your internal being that you actually release your perspective towards these things that you love or don't love so much, where it's simply you see everything as a gift of God, gift of life, whatever, the divine, the universe, and then throw yourself entirely into it and see what happens. I was listening to a podcast with Matthew McConaughey yesterday, and he was just saying, don't half-ass it. So, don't half-ass it. But, like, surrender, Okay, I love you. Have the best day of your existence, and you're a beautiful human being. And I want to squish you and kiss you and give you so much love because you're so cute. Thanks for listening.